Here in Minneapolis, a minority-owned healthcare provider built a thriving enterprise focused on serving the city's most vulnerable citizens. The operation was led by founder Raynelle and Robin Stepney, a licensed administrator. They prioritized strict clinical compliance, ensuring that every patient received legitimate, documented care. To manage their growth, they built a heavy professional infrastructure. They hired licensed CPA firms to process payroll and utilized specialized billing services, guaranteeing that every dollar passing through the company was tracked and accounted for. The ultimate proof of their compliance and success came from the open market. The businesses were just 45 days away from closing a verified $11 million sale. This was a generational wealth engine preparing for a fully legal, highly profitable exit. The family also employed Chavis Willis, who functioned strictly as a property and construction manager. He maintained the physical facilities and had zero clinical duties or direct contact with the patients receiving care. Under Minnesota law in 2018, background studies were legally required for staff with direct patient contact. Property management roles did not require them. The Minnesota Department of Human Services, or DHS, the state agency overseeing these programs, knew exactly how the company was structured. State licensors and recorded phone lines document their full awareness of Chavis's specific management role. Regulators monitored the business for years without issuing warnings or citations. They waited in silence until the company was on the verge of its multi-million-dollar sale. The state engineered a procedural ambush designed to freeze the family's assets at the point of maximum financial damage. On the eve of the sale, law enforcement tactical teams raided the offices, seizing records and personal devices. The raid produced zero evidence of phantom billing. In fact, an investigator from the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, the state agency responsible for prosecuting healthcare fraud, admitted on the record that they possessed no evidence against Administrator Robin Stepney. Lacking criminal evidence, the state pivoted to a clerical error. They pointed to a shared employer identification number, or EIN, a unique tax code assigned to businesses, that was listed incorrectly on enrollment paperwork between two distinct entities. Regulators used this typo to bypass the 14th Amendment's guarantee of due process. They implemented a total payment withhold without providing the mandatory notice or a pre-deprivation hearing, which is legally required to review evidence before seizing funds. The payment freeze immediately asphyxiated Step Forward, Inc. Unable to pay staff, the company was forced to transfer its vulnerable clients to other agencies. Regulators leveraged a single paperwork error to dismantle an $11 million enterprise. To understand how the state applies its regulatory power, we have to look at their treatment of a different healthcare provider, New Way Alliance. This table details the enforcement disparity. New Way Alliance, governed by an all-white board, engaged in an $18.5 million kickback scheme. They resolved this fraud through a civil settlement, remaining operational. Step Forward, the Black-owned business cited for a clerical error, faced police raids and asset levies. The state's payment freeze triggered a chain reaction of displacement. It led to the eviction of founder Raynelle, a woman living with dementia, and forced Robin Stepney out of her home and her licensed profession. The enforcement apparatus protects white-owned entities that divert millions, while dismantling Black-owned businesses over administrative paperwork. In January 2026, the Office of the Legislative Auditor, an independent state watchdog, delivered testimony detailing pervasive negligence within the Department of Human Services. This document outlines the OLA complaint, pointing to a highly specific finding. DHS staff engaged in a systemic effort to backdate and fabricate documents during their audits. To build a criminal case against the family, the state relied heavily on an employee named KK. In 2021, the family caught KK stealing from the business, conducted an internal audit, and attempted to prosecute her. State investigators seized the family's private investigative files. During 3 separate interviews, they offered KK leniency in exchange for pointing to Chavis Willis as her partner in the theft. Digital Discovery later uncovered a 2021 text message from KK directly to Chavis, explicitly apologizing for the theft she committed against his company. The state manufactured a criminal narrative using a known thief to provide legal cover for their destruction of a compliant business. The responsibility for these actions now sits with the Attorney General and the Governor at the Minnesota State Capitol. In 2025, the state legislature scrambled to amend the background study laws. By updating the statutes to specifically include roles like property management, they tacitly admitted they lacked the legal authority to disqualify Chavez in 2018. The $12 million sabotaged sale, $5 million in lost equity, and hundreds of thousands in personal asset levies, totaling over $24 million in damages. Regulators froze the family's bank accounts to prevent them from mounting a legal defense, but they failed to erase the paper trail documenting their own administrative failures. The state broke the machine. Now they must pay for the wreckage.